Frustration spilling into the COP delegate zone this morning.
What do we want? Climate justice!
And emotion.
Now!
I'm saying to the leaders who are here now, this is on your watch. Sorry, it's so important. You know, we are literally talking about having a safe future.
The virtually unanimous judgment here that the draft COP agreement released overnight fails to deliver holding the world to 1.5 Celsius temperature rise. That's the whole point of this conference. From his party in crisis in Westminster to a COP in dire need of galvanising. A man not known for diplomatic finesse, coming, Downing Street said, to knock heads together.
It's clear that after a surge of really positive, game-changing announcements last week on methane, on finance, on forests in particular, we're now firmly in the hard yards, the nuts and bolts of international climate diplomacy. And the negotiations are getting tough.
COP26 is staring failure in the face. He knows it.
The world will find it absolutely incomprehensible if we fail, and the backlash from people will be immense and it will be long-lasting. And frankly, we will deserve their criticism and their opprobrium.
Delegates, negotiators, charities, campaigners, indeed the British presidency itself, they all say that Saudi Arabia is a major stumbling block to progress at this conference. Small wonder, therefore, that the Prime Minister, before he came here to Glasgow this morning, called up the Saudi dictator Mohammed bin Salman, presumably to try and knock another head together.
Prince bin Salman, everybody is saying that Saudi Arabia are the key obstacle to these talks. What do you say?
Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman here today dismissing the idea that the Saudis are blocking progress.
Are the Saudis blocking the talks?
What you've been hearing is a false allegation, a cheat and a lie.
So will the Saudis then move away from fossil fuels?
So you see, do you agree that fossil fuels are the main driver of global warming?
No, I think there will be a good way forward. We should use all resources as long as we congregate around mitigating.
Saudi Arabia not the only problem country, of course. Brazil, Russia, Australia and the biggest emitter, China, all seen as barriers to the needed progress. The Americans too accused of failing to push action needed to meet the climate crisis.
America is back. Our president was here. He had achieved, there were many successes that were achieved in collaboration, not dictation or condescension, but in collaboration with other countries, many of whom were ahead of us because we had, of course, the dark period of 4 years preceding the President Biden's administration coming into office.
True, the draft text does talk about phasing out coal and ending oil subsidies, both a first, but the latter probably won't make the cut. Financing poor countries to decarbonise and paying for the damage climate change is causing remain major problems. The British are spinning the positives like their lives depend upon it. Meeting the Saudis to bang more heads, the UN climate chief working flat out to remain positive.
We are trying, of course, to work with all of the countries in order for us to get to a consolidated package for Friday.
That is not how it's playing. Climate Action Network is the world's largest grouping of climate charities. At their press conference, they let rip.
These are just words. When it comes down to it, they will make no difference. This text will still not do anything for those who are being hardest hit by deadly flooding, cyclones, droughts, rising sea levels and crop failures.
The electric car sits silent in the main concourse here. The conference theme today was green transport, but all attention is now on a summit which has 48 hours left to avoid failure.
And then, in the past hour, China and America suddenly issued press conferences saying they've reached an agreement. They're calling it the Glasgow Agreement. It is for greater cooperation between those two countries to achieve, frankly, much bigger ambitions on climate change and stopping that process from rolling on out of control. If they can do it, fantastic. What we're going to look at, obviously, tomorrow is the 2 Ds, the detail and the delivery, as ever. It matters hugely because, quite simply, these two countries are by far and away the two biggest polluters, the two biggest emitters of greenhouse gases. If the human race has got a chance of saving itself from itself, these two countries have to be on board and in accord. Tonight, it appears that process is beginning to unfold. So in the last hour, the world just became a little better, but check on the detail and the delivery.
We will indeed. Alex Thompson there in the thick of it in the conference centre, and we'll hope to get you John Kerry speaking about that agreement later in the programme. Well, while Boris Johnson and other politicians paint the big picture, the devil is, as ever, in the treaty detail. A may instead of a must could make or break the difference between 1.5 Celsius or 1.8. Well, decoding climate diplo-speak is a key skill, not only for negotiators, but also, of course, for journalists. And that's where we turn to our climate reporter, Simon Roach, also in the conference centre. Simon, help us make sense of all this.
Well, today, Matt, there's a lot of decoding to do because, of course, this morning we got this final text, which is the first draft, of what a final agreement from Glasgow may look like. It's in draft form. It's essentially building blocks that will be chopped and traded over the next few days. As Alex said, it's the first time coal is mentioned, the first time fossil fuels have actually made it into one of these texts. Crucially, it's also the first time that an option has been put onto the table which could potentially keep that 1.5 goal in sight. This says that countries may need to come back next year with increased pledges, because remember, at the moment, they're nowhere near strong enough. Let's just take a quick look at what it actually says, though. Because really this will be one of the main fights over the next few days. And many are concerned, though, that this language, words like recalls, like urges, is simply not strong enough to actually make this stuff happen. Others, at the same time, will want that language to go altogether. So that's one of the big issues. On another, I spoke to today one of the men who's leading the negotiations for the whole of Africa, and he told me that securing cash from international carbon markets to help Africa adapt to the impacts of climate change is one of their red lines.
I think the red lines on Paris rulebook is the Article 6, the funding of the Article 6 for adaptation. But there is no way for Africa and other countries that are the most vulnerable, like SIDS, to get money to adapt themselves.
And who in that room is resisting those calls? Where are the battle lines drawn now?
We have a lot of countries like, we can say US, for example, because their own legislation cannot accept that they can be taxed by an international mechanism. But for that, we say, okay, come with another viable mechanism that can work to predict finance flow for adaptation.
So, Simon, a bit of a standoff there on carbon markets, but what did we really learn today about whether we'll ever meet that goal of 1.5 degrees?
Well, there's not very long to go, and yet it's still too early to say. On the overall viability of that goal, big emitters are crucial. Of course, you've just heard about this new bilateral deal between US and China. Insiders I've spoken to today said that the big emitters are still engaged and that this text released this morning is enough to bring them back with increased ambition next year. But right now, with such fluffy language, it really does seem that that prediction would essentially be based on good faith.